Have you ever been called paranoid for asking too many questions? Told you overthink everything? Accused of being negative because you don't just accept what you're told? They make it sound like there's something wrong with you, like your skepticism is a character flaw, like you should just trust more, believe more, stop analyzing everything. But what if I told you that Friedrich Nietzsche, one of the most radical philosophers in history, discovered that questioning everything isn't paranoia at all? What if your relentless skepticism is actually intelligence, operating at a level that makes others deeply uncomfortable? What if the people telling you to stop questioning are the ones who have something to hide? Nietzsche said, "There are no facts, only interpretations." Think about that. Everything you've been taught to accept as truth is just someone's interpretation. Every authority figure, every institution, every tradition, they're all offering you their version of reality and demanding you accept it without question. And when you dare to question, they call you paranoid. But Nietzsche understood something profound. The masses who never question anything need you to stop. Your questions threaten their comfortable illusions. Your skepticism exposes the cracks in their belief systems. Your refusal to accept things at face value reveals that their entire worldview is built on assumptions they've never examined. Today, we're going to dismantle the lie that questioning is paranoia. We're going to reveal why your critical mind isn't a disorder. It's intelligence that consensus thinking finds threatening. Why people who never question anything aren't trusting, they're lazy. And why your refusal to accept convenient narratives is precisely what Nietzsche called the path to becoming more than human. If you've ever been made to feel crazy for not believing what everyone else believes, stay with me. Because what comes next will validate everything you've always known, but were told to suppress. Nietzsche observed something that will shake your understanding of reality. He said, "All things are subject to interpretation. Whichever interpretation prevails at a given time is a function of power and not truth." Read that carefully. Truth doesn't prevail because it's true. Interpretations prevail because they have power behind them. Who controls the narrative controls reality. And when you question the narrative, you're not being paranoid, you're threatening power. That's why they want you to stop. Think about every institution that's ever asked for your unquestioning obedience. Government, religion, corporations, media, education systems. They all operate on the same principle. Accept what we tell you without question, and if you don't, there's something wrong with you. They've created entire psychiatric categories for people who question too much. Oppositional defiant disorder, paranoid personality disorder, conspiracy theorist. These aren't medical diagnoses, they're social control mechanisms. Labels designed to pathologize intelligence that refuses to comply. But Nietzsche saw through this centuries ago. He understood that collective comfort creates morality, creates truth, creates reality itself through consensus. And anyone who questions that collective agreement becomes a threat to the entire system. You are that threat. You're awake. You see that the emperor has no clothes. You recognize that most of what people call truth is just consensus. And consensus is just collective laziness dressed up as wisdom. Nietzsche wrote, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. This is your struggle. Every day, the tribe tries to overwhelm you with its narratives, its assumptions, its unexamined beliefs. And every day you resist by asking the questions nobody else wants to ask. Why do we accept this system? Who benefits from this belief? What if the opposite is true?" These questions aren't paranoia. They're the sign of a mind that refuses to be colonized by other people's interpretations. And the sleeping majority hates this. Your questions force them to think. And thinking is painful when you've spent your entire life avoiding it. If you're feeling this, if something in you is recognizing itself in these words, Stay with me. We're about to go deeper into what Nietzsche discovered about the nature of truth, power, and the intelligence that terrifies those who prefer comfortable illusions. Watch what happens when someone questions a deeply held belief in any group. The group doesn't respond with logic or evidence. It responds with emotion, with anger, with accusations, with social punishment. Why? The belief isn't held for rational reason. It's held because it's comfortable, because it's what everyone else believes, because questioning it would require effort and courage that most people don't have. Nietzsche called this herd morality, the morality of the weak, who band together and create rules that protect weakness and punish strength. And one of the cardinal sins in herd morality is questioning. Questioning is an act of intellectual strength. It requires you to stand alone against consensus, to risk being wrong, to prioritize truth over comfort. The unexamined mind can't do this, so they create a world where questioning itself becomes immoral, where skepticism is reframed as cynicism, where critical thinking is pathologized as paranoia, where the person asking questions is treated as the problem rather than the system that can't answer them. You've experienced this. You've asked a legitimate question and been met not with an answer, but with, "Why are you so negative?" Or, "You need to have more faith," or, "Not everything is a conspiracy." These aren't responses, they're deflections, attempts to make you feel bad for thinking. But Nietzsche would ask, why should you feel bad for thinking? Since when is using your mind a character flaw? Why is blind acceptance considered a virtue while intelligent skepticism is treated as a vice? The answer reveals everything. Blind acceptance is easy to control. Intelligent skepticism is impossible to manipulate. And the people in power, whether in governments, institutions, or just social groups, need compliance. They need people who don't question. The moment people start questioning, the entire power structure becomes unstable. This is why your questioning bothers people. Your questions are too valid. You're poking holes in narratives that people have built their entire identities around. You're exposing contradictions they've spent years not noticing. You're making visible what everyone agreed to keep invisible. Nietzsche understood that all social structures are built on collective agreements to not look too closely, to accept convenient fictions, to pretend that interpretations are facts. And the person who breaks this agreement, who insists on looking closely, who demands evidence rather than accepting interpretations, that person becomes dangerous to the comfortable lies that hold consensus together. Write this down. Say it to yourself. My questions are not paranoia. They're intelligence refusing to be controlled, because that's what Nietzsche spent his life defending. The right of the strong mind to question everything, to create its own values, to stand apart from comfortable delusions. Now Nietzsche's philosophy reveals its radical core. He believed in something he called perspectivism, the idea that there is no objective truth, only perspectives. Every person, every culture, every era interprets reality differently, and no interpretation is objectively correct. They're just different ways of organizing experience. This sounds chaotic. If there's no objective truth, doesn't that mean anything goes? Doesn't that descend into pure relativism, where nothing means anything? No. And this is where most people misunderstand Nietzsche. He wasn't saying all perspectives are equally valuable. He was saying something far more radical, that the strongest perspectives, the most life-affirming interpretations, should prevail because they enhance existence. And how do you develop strong perspectives? By questioning weak ones, by refusing to accept inherited interpretations, by demolishing belief systems that diminish life rather than enhance it. This is what your questioning does. Every time you ask, why do we believe this? You're testing whether that belief enhances life or restricts it. Every time you refuse to accept a convenient narrative, you're clearing space for a better interpretation. Every time you stand alone against popular belief, you're exercising what Nietzsche called the will to power. Not power over others, power over yourself, the power to determine your own values rather than inheriting them, the power to create meaning rather than consuming pre-packaged meanings, the power to say, this interpretation doesn't serve life, so I reject it. The masses can't do this. They need to be told what to believe. They need authorities to hand them pre-approved interpretations. They need the comfort of knowing that their beliefs are validated by consensus. And when you question those beliefs, you're exposing that their beliefs were never really theirs to begin with. This is why they react with such hostility. You're not attacking their beliefs. You're exposing that they're just repeating what they were taught, accepting what they were told, believing what everyone around them believes. And your questioning makes this visible. Nietzsche wrote, "The snake which cannot cast its skin has to die." As well the minds which are prevented from changing their opinions, they cease to be mind. Your questioning is your mind casting its skin, shedding old interpretations that no longer serve, evolving beyond beliefs you've outgrown. But those who never question, they're wearing the same skin they were born with, the same beliefs they were handed as children, the same unexamined assumptions they've carried for decades. And they've mistaken this stagnation for stability, this intellectual death for wisdom. You haven't. You're alive in a way they're not. Your mind is active, dynamic, constantly testing and refining and discarding and rebuilding. And this vitality, this intellectual aliveness, this is what they call paranoia. To them, changing your mind means weakness. Questioning means doubt. Skepticism means fear. They've confused rigidity with strength. But Nietzsche knew better. The strongest mind is the most flexible, the most willing to question, the most capable of evolving. The pattern becomes clear throughout history. Every major shift in human understanding came from someone who questioned what everyone else accepted. Copernicus questioned geocentrism. Darwin questioned divine creation. Einstein questioned Newtonian physics. These weren't paranoid people. They were intelligent people who refused to accept interpretations that didn't match reality. And every time, the sleeping majority resisted. They always resist questioning. The old interpretation was comfortable. Changing interpretations requires effort, requires humility, requires admitting you were wrong. And most people would rather be comfortably wrong than uncomfortably evolving. Think about how quickly narratives shift. Yesterday's conspiracy theory becomes today's acknowledged truth. Science told us fat was the enemy for 50 years. Now it's sugar. Eggs were dangerous, then healthy, then dangerous again. Each generation treats current consensus as absolute truth until it isn't. But in the moment, questioning that consensus gets you labeled paranoid. They replaced religious authority with scientific authority, but question the science and you're anti-intellectual. They replaced monarchs with experts, but question the experts and you're dangerous. The authority changes. The demand for unquestioning obedience remains the same. Nietzsche called people who transcend this the Übermensch, often translated as overman or superman. Not superior in some fascist sense, but beyond the need for approval, beyond inherited morality, beyond the comfort of unquestioned beliefs. The Übermensch creates their own values through questioning everything the masses accept. And this creation doesn't come from arrogance. It comes from the courage to stand alone with your questions until you find answers that actually resonate with your experience of reality. You're on this path. Every question you ask is a step beyond consensus thinking. Every narrative you refuse to accept is a move toward intellectual sovereignty. Every time you're called paranoid for thinking critically, you're getting closer to what Nietzsche envisioned. But there's something else, something uncomfortable. Popular belief isn't wrong to fear your questions. Once you start questioning, once you really commit to examining every belief, every assumption, every comfortable interpretation, you can't stop. And eventually your questions will turn on things they hold sacred, on beliefs that give their lives meaning. And when that happens, they'll fight back. They'll fight with emotion, with social pressure, with attempts to make you doubt your own sanity. They'll tell you you're overthinking, that not everything needs to be analyzed, that you're making things too complicated. But Nietzsche would ask, who decided that simplicity is better than accuracy? Who decided that comfortable beliefs are preferable to uncomfortable truths? Who decided that questioning too much is a problem rather than a virtue? The sleeping majority decided. They need simplicity, need comfortable beliefs, need you to stop questioning so they can maintain their illusions without your skepticism making them visible. If you've ever felt isolated because of your questions, if you've ever wondered whether there's something wrong with you for not accepting what everyone else accepts, let that doubt go. There's nothing wrong with you. You're just operating at a level of intellectual honesty that most people can't tolerate. Write this in the comments. I question everything because truth matters more than comfort. Not as a declaration of war, but as a statement of your values. Because that's what Nietzsche's philosophy is really about. Having the strength to create and live by your own values rather than inheriting them from the herd. Now Nietzsche's most challenging idea reveals itself. He said, God is dead. God remains dead. And we have killed him. This isn't atheism for atheism's sake. It's recognition that the old sources of absolute truth, the authorities we used to trust to tell us what to believe, no longer have power. And in the absence of absolute truth, in the vacuum left by collapsed authorities, we face a choice. We can desperately cling to new authorities, new sources of absolute truth to replace the old ones, or we can accept the terrifying freedom of creating our own values. The masses choose the first option. They replace religious authority with scientific authority, or political authority, or social media authority, or expert authority. They need someone to tell them what's true because facing reality without that authority is too frightening. But you're different. You question the new authorities just as much as the old ones. You understand what Nietzsche understood. All authority is interpretation presenting itself as truth. And accepting any interpretation without question is intellectual surrender. This is why your questioning will never stop bothering people. They need authorities. They need to believe someone knows the truth. They need the comfort of thinking that if they just trust the right experts, follow the right leaders, believe the right narratives, everything will make sense. But you know better. You know that even experts are offering interpretations. Even scientists are working within paradigms that could be wrong. Even consensus can be collective delusion. And this knowledge, this awareness that there are no guarantees, no absolute truths, no final authorities, this is what makes you dangerous to collective comfort. Nietzsche wrote, "That which does not kill us makes us stronger." But he also understood that most people prefer weakness to the strength that comes from surviving difficult truths. It's easier to accept comfortable lies than to live with uncomfortable uncertainties. Your questioning forces uncertainty into spaces where people want certainty. Your skepticism introduces doubt where people want faith. Your refusal to accept interpretations as facts disrupts the collective agreement that holds consensus thinking together. And yes, sometimes your questions will be wrong. Sometimes you'll be skeptical of things that turn out to be true. Sometimes your refusal to accept the narrative will lead you down dead ends. But Nietzsche would say, better to be wrong while thinking than right while sleeping. Better to question and err than accept and stagnate. The goal isn't to be right about everything. The goal is to be alive, to be intellectually active, to be constantly testing, refining, evolving your understanding. And that process requires questioning everything, even at the risk of being wrong, even at the cost of being called paranoid. The masses will never understand this. They measure correctness by consensus. If most people believe something, it must be true. If you're the only one questioning, you must be wrong. But Nietzsche knew that consensus is just collective laziness, that popular beliefs are often popular precisely because they're comforting rather than accurate. Truth isn't democratic. It doesn't care about votes. And the person standing alone with an uncomfortable question is often closer to reality than the crowd sharing a comfortable delusion. This recognition comes with profound loneliness. When you question everything, you can't join the cozy consensus. You can't participate in the collective agreement to not look too closely. You can't find comfort in believing what everyone else believes. But you also can't be controlled, can't be manipulated, can't be fed narratives and expected to swallow them without chewing. And this intellectual sovereignty, this freedom from mental colonization, this is what Nietzsche meant by becoming more than human, not superhuman in power, but beyond human in the sense of transcending the human tendency to seek comfort in unquestioned beliefs, beyond the need for authorities to tell you what's true, beyond the fear that keeps most people from questioning. Stay with us if you want to keep exploring these ideas. Subscribe not because we have all the answers, but because we're committed to asking all the questions. We're here, not as a herd, but as individuals who've chosen intellectual honesty over social comfort. Consider Nietzsche's insight about living authentically. He asked, "Would you want to repeat your life eternally, exactly as you've lived it? If repeating a life where you never questioned anything fills you with dread, that tells you something. Your skepticism isn't paranoia. It's your authentic self emerging. It's the sign of a life being lived on your own terms rather than on borrowed values. Your questioning is the destruction that makes creation possible. Every belief you interrogate is a potential false value being cleared away. Every narrative you refuse to accept is space being created for interpretations that actually align with your experience. Every time you're called paranoid, you're doing the difficult work of becoming who you actually are rather than who you were told to be. Nietzsche wrote, "You have your way. I have my way. As for the right way, the correct way, and the only way, it does not exist." This is the heart of it. There is no right way to live, no correct interpretation of reality, no single narrative that everyone must accept. But consensus thinking can't tolerate this. They need the right way, the correct interpretation, the true narrative. Without these certainties, they feel lost, adrift, terrified. You don't need these certainties. You've learned to navigate uncertainty, to question without knowing the answer, to doubt without collapsing into nihilism, to live without the crutch of absolute truth. This is the intelligence that bothers consensus thinking. Your comfort with uncertainty exposes their desperate need for certainty. Your willingness to question exposes their unwillingness to think, and they can't admit this. So they call you paranoid. They say you overthink. They accuse you of making life too complicated. Admitting that you're simply more intellectually honest than they are would require them to question themselves. And that's the one thing the sleeping majority will never do. So they pathologize your questioning, turn your strength into weakness, your intelligence into disorder, your courage into paranoia, and hope that you'll believe them, that you'll accept their interpretation of your skepticism and stop asking questions that make them uncomfortable. But you won't. Your mind doesn't work that way. You were built to question, to probe, to doubt, to verify. And no amount of social pressure will change that. Nietzsche knew people like you. He called you free spirits. Not free in the sense of having no commitments, but free in the sense of not being bound by inherited beliefs. Free to question everything. Free to create your own values. Free to stand alone if necessary. This freedom terrifies most people. They'd rather be enslaved to comfortable beliefs than free to face uncomfortable uncertainties. They'd rather be part of consensus thinking than stand alone as individuals. They'd rather call you paranoid than admit they're cowards. But you're not paranoid. You're awake. You see that reality is interpretation. That truth is perspective. That certainty is illusion. And you have the courage to live without the comfortable lies that keep most people intellectually sedated. So take a breath. Notice that you're thinking right now. Notice that you're questioning. Notice that in this moment of skeptical awareness, you're more alive, more honest, more genuinely yourself than you ever are when you're pretending to accept what you don't actually believe. This is the truth the masses ignore. That questioning isn't paranoia. It's intelligence refusing to be controlled. It's strength refusing to be weakened. It's life refusing to be sedated. You are a questioner. And that's not something to cure. It's something to embrace. Welcome home.